This is the story I was trying to do last week. And of course, it has snowballed and evolved and yeah. So there's been a lot of propaganda happening out there. And I'm hoping that YouTube doesn't pull my channel down too for what we're about to do here. But I'm not necessarily. Yep, it's safe and effective. That's correct. And
we're fucked.
I think we need to acknowledge that all to start. So I've got a bunch of stories here, of course, about what's happening in Gaza. Yeah, I know. So we covered this one last week before we got hit by, I don't know if it was Discord or what, but I thought that this one is super important because I didn't see enough people talking about how mainstream media is pushing fake stories, right? So they publicized the evidence-free claim that Hamas beheaded 40 Israeli babies, only to be quietly walked back a week later. People are still asking for the screenshots, show us some evidence. No, they claim they saw that. I think Netanyahu even still says that he did. All right. They also claim that this Israeli festival attendee, Shani Lauk, was murdered.
They're also making AI versions of Hamas leaders playing ping pong.
Yep. Yep. The fake hands.
And we saw today them making AI fucking
protests.
Israeli parades.
Right. Protests in support of Israel. Yes. Media have also been using the passive voice, right? Like we said, this is another way of dehumanizing by saying that, Palestinians have died, but that Israelis were killed. It's passive. You got Ben Shapiro, of course. Wow. Ben has certainly been stepping in it this week. Right.
Right. With his fucking puppy bullshit.
Right. Charlie G actually made a whole video about him. That's very funny if you go check her out on Twitter. But he got caught using AI images that he passed off, that he tried to pass off as baby. But as it turns out that in that sheet was actually a puppy. And they took out the puppy and replaced it with that AI image of a Mid-Journey, make me what you would perceive to be a burned beyond recognition infant. Gross. That somebody even put that into AI. Wow. All right. But then that this has not been a new phenomenon, right? That this has been for years that journalists have been fired and have lost their job and been silenced because they speak out on behalf of the Palestinian people. We even covered a segment.
Look at the gaslight.
Yes. Earlier this year, we covered a segment about Palestinian media and how badly it's been suppressed. And yeah, it's terrible. So again, this is a really nice kind of slideshow that was put together by Mint Press off an article written by Alan McLeod that is extensive. Go read the Alan McLeod article. If I know there's a link to it on Mint Press's Instagram. All right.
Well, looks like we got ourselves a Reade.
This one also is maddening, which is that Israeli artillery killed Reuters cameraman Issam Abdullah in Lebanon, right? Yet in its announcement of that fact, Reuters never even mentioned who killed him. And there's the statement. Gross, right? Then you've got all of this is designed to manufacture public consent for Israeli war crimes against Palestine and beyond. The devastation is beyond heartbreaking. And if you look at our Rockfin and Rumble channels, we ran some videos last night that were put together by our friend Amira over at the Empathic Times, whose father is over there somewhere. And she talked about and showed some of the really graphic stuff that can't be shown on YouTube, definitely. So it's on our Rockfin and Rumble. I told her I wanted to make sure that it ended up there because I don't want it to be pulled down, and it's important stuff that needs to be documented. So we'll always be there as long as that's up. On top of it, there was
9, 11.
There was a desire to get out in front of the story, of course. And Greg, Big Mad Crab, over here at INN, shout out. He's probably in the chat. If not, he's working on some graphics for the Indie Media Awards. And by the way, Mint Press is an Indie Media Award honoree. As is Alan McLeod, so you can hit that one more time. Crab put together this little video that talked about the narrative, right? The news pundits begin repeating the phrase failure of imagination and links it to 9/11. Now, this is interesting because we then get an article from Norman Solomon, and this is where we kind of got cut off. I showed this video. We were going to go to an article by Norman Solomon that kind of equates and shows that they're trying to tie this narrative to say that what had happened on the 7th of October was Israel's 9/11. And we're going to read the article that Norman wrote about that. But
failures that are labeled as intelligence failures,
9/11.
when you really look at it, are in fact failures of imagination.
I think it's basically a failure of imagination. We never believed that Hamas had the capability to do this.
Imagination.
There are so many painful questions facing Israel right now about what everyone accepts is a massive failure, be it a intelligence failure, a military failure, be it really, Nicole, a failure of imagination.
Yeah. It was dismissed as unlikely to happen. I think there were breakdowns on multiple fronts where our failure of imagination.
I think Hamas got smarter in terms of preempting cyber and satellite monitoring by the Israelis. But I think the broader problem is a failure of imagination.
Settler movement was too focused on the West Bank, militants in the West Bank, and that it was a concentration of resources on the wrong part of the country and a failure of imagination, that a certain arrogance that they just didn't think Hamas would be able to do something like this.
Talk to me about the intelligence breakdown and what Israel is saying about their inability to see this coming.
Yeah, Katie, that's right. Not just a breakdown, but a total massive catastrophic failure is how it's being seen in Western capitals. I spoke with John Brennan yesterday, and he talked about not only just kind of a failure of intelligence, but also a failure of imagination. And it's something our colleague Raf Sanchez has been talking about as well in the last 24 hours. They couldn't even conceive that this could happen. But
I think, frankly, Wolf, was a failure.
Inconceivable!
I know it seems sort of cliche, but a failure of imagination. That's similar, it seems to me, what happened in October 73.
MSNBC national security and intelligence analyst and a former CIA officer. Mark, you were the first early Saturday to say that the Hamas attack is Israel's 9/11 because of the surprise factor, because of how well coordinated it was, and it was a failure of imagination.
Was bad.
They had never thought, apparently, that Hamas could come in and do a ground invasion as well as from the air and the sea.
You know, intelligence that came in and was discounted was the failure of collection, a failure of imagination, of course. It's been something that's bandied about. But
it's pretty clear there was complacency. This was sort of a stunning, not only intelligence failure, but failure of imagination.
I think the failure of imagination we consider to be one of the major failures of the government.
I remember.
We just didn't get it in this country.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Sure, Jan.
With me.
Sure, Jan.
See
so,
the world of failure of imagination.
So yeah, this is nonsense. Again,
Yeah.
There is so little paid to the destruction and the devastation and the genocide and the ethnic cleansing and the mass murder of children that is happening right now in Gaza is disgraceful. We will speak out on it, and we are definitely against apartheid. We are against what is happening there. We want an immediate ceasefire. We don't believe that even the word ceasefire is appropriate, because ceasefire indicates that there's a war happening on both sides, and this is at this point just a devastation and a pummeling and a pounding, and it's heartbreaking. And I
Catch me outside. How about
Yeah. So that's on October 11th. This was 11 days ago. Norman wrote about how Israel's 9/11 is a slogan to rationalize open-ended killing of Palestinian civilians, which is what we've unfortunately seen. And even today, they said that today was the worst campaign and the most relentless campaign, part of the campaign they've seen yet, and that they have no intention of slowing down. So what Norman Solomon says here is that when Israel's ambassador to the United Nations spoke outside the Security Council Sunday, he said, quote, "This is Israel's 9/11. This is Israel's 9/11. Meanwhile, a PBS NewsHour
9/11.
Yeah, in a PBS NewsHour interview, Israel's ambassador said, "This is, as someone said, our 9/11." Again, so he's trying to put the narrative. While the phrase might seem logical, okay, that it's already being used as a huge propaganda weapon by Israel's government, now engaged in a massive war crimes against civilians in Gaza after mass murder of Israelis by Hamas last weekend. On the surface, an analogy between the atrocities just suffered by Israelis and what happened on September 11th might seem to justify calls for an unequivocal solidarity with Israel, but horrific actions are in process from an Israeli government that has long maintained a system of apartheid while crushing basic human rights of Palestinian people. What is very sinister about trumpeting Israel's 9/11 is what happened after America's 9/11. Wearing the shroud of victim, the U.S. proceeded to use horrible tragedy suffered inside its own borders as a license to kill vast numbers of people in the name of retaliation, righteousness, and of course the war on terror. It's a playbook that the government of Benjamin Netanyahu is currently adapting and implementing with a vengeance. Now underway, Israel's collective punishment of 2.3 million people in Gaza is an intensification of what Israel has been doing to Palestinians for decades. I think Norman wrote this really beautifully and is summing up what my feelings are about this. But Israel's extremism, more than ever, touting itself as a matter of self-defense, is at new racist depths of willingness to treat human beings as suitable for extermination. And I think we used that word last week also. They are trying to exterminate the Palestinian people after taking their land and pushing them into smaller and smaller and smaller area. And just for everyone who doesn't know already in the chat, I am Jewish, and this is a really personal, difficult issue for me. I have family that is still Zionist and still believes all the narrative and the propaganda, and my whole point of doing this is partly to cut through that and to have a conversation about seeing it from the side of a olive farmer in Palestine in 1947, somebody who was living in that region that was kind of a neutral zone controlled by Britain. It was a colony, but it wasn't really controlled by anyone per se. I mean, anyway.
This is where the Irish are just so good at this. They get it.
Yeah. So, like he says, is a terrible echo from the post-11 approach, right? So they were terrified by the current situation and worried for their safety as well as that of their children and their families. Yeah. Yeah. Even before the latest restrictions, residents of Gaza already faced widespread food insecurity, restrictions on movement, and water shortages. It is textbook definition. Now, that is all within its own borders. They have no right to self-govern. They have no right to free travel. And now you're denying them electricity and water. And even today, there was supplies delivered at the Rafah Gate, which they keep bombing, by the way. But they delivered 2 trucks, enough for 22,000 people for a population of 2.5 million. Nice. In the name of fighting terrorism, the U.S. has inflicted collective punishment on huge numbers of people who had absolutely nothing to do with 9/11. The Cost of War project at Brown University calculates that more than 400,000 direct civilian deaths in the violence of the U.S. post 9/11 wars in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, and elsewhere. 400,000 people. Now,
You violated the law.
the other problem here is, what do you think this does as far as fighting terrorism? Do you think that this doesn't radicalize an entire new generation of children and people who have seen what's happening here? I mean, we can't allow this, but we are allowing and endorsing it, funding it, and providing them the weaponry to do it. Early in the war on terror, Donald Rumsfeld had fashioned a template to provide approval for virtually any killing by the U.S. military. We didn't start this war, he said in a news briefing in December 2001. That was the Tora Bora thing.
We didn't start the fire.
So understand responsibility for every single casualty in this war, whether they're innocent Afghans or innocent Americans, rests at the feet of the Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. We're not responsible for anything we do because you started this.
No, we
What?
never made those people that started it. That wasn't us that funded them. Godless commies or anything like that.
Right?
Israel totally didn't make Hamas or ISIS.
Right. Or nor did WikiLeaks publish a cable from the head of the Israeli intelligence service in 2008 or 9 saying that what they want is for Hamas to take over and run Gaza. And they basically orchestrated to make that happen. Donald Rumsfeld, of course, was showered with acclaim from the U.S. media establishment, while he not only insisted that the U.S. government had no responsibility for the deaths caused by its armed forces, he also attested to the U.S. military's notable decency. Wow. That man belongs in The Hague. The targeting capabilities and the care that goes into targeting to see that precise targets are struck and that other targets are not struck is as impressive as anything anyone could see. Yeah, ask Daniel Hale about that, because Daniel Hale's sitting in prison for reporting the fact that 90% of our drone bombing program went and attacked civilians and was unsuccessful. Donald Rumsfeld. Of course, this was years before Daniel Hale. But of course, Donald Rumsfeld is a board member of the Carlyle Group and a multi-millionaire with tons of power and influence globally.
Organization beginning with K.
Well, no, Carlyle is with a C, but he lauded the care that goes into it, the humanity that goes into it. Yeah, the humanity to destroy.
Clan also starts with.
Okay, so I don't know if Rumsfeld ever was associated, but even before its current high-tech attack on Gaza, Israel had amassed a long track record of killing civilians there while denying it every step of the way. For instance, the UN found that Israel's 2014 Operation Protective Edge assault, 1,462 civilians, including 495 children. This is also Gaza's and Palestinians 50% under the age of 18. They're murdering children. They're imprisoning children that have been imprisoned since the day they were born. And it's not even in prison, because in prison, they're treated more humanely than this. In prison, they actually were guilty and committed a crime to put themselves there. There's
a word for what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's called apartheid.
Well, there's another word.
Well, I don't think that it's
those camps you got to focus real hard at.
Yeah, but no, the difference is that you round people, they round people up, and it was run by there's a lot of differences there. I would not. Yeah, I don't.
That totally rounding up the people of Palestine, like a wall, walling them completely off. I mean, pushing them into a small little strip of land.
Yes.
Like in 1948.
Well, not even 48, 67, really.
They could have put them on. They didn't put them on trains. They just force marched them.
But,
right now they're still taking away whatever homes outside of the concentration.
Now, again,
they didn't have a day of broken glass or whatever, but close enough, right?
Yep. But this was on the 11th. So this was 11 days ago, and he had predicted at that point, there's no reason to doubt that the civilian death toll from the present Israeli military actions will soon climb far above the number of people killed by the Hamas assault days ago. That's for sure. As in the aftermath of 9/11, official claims to be only fighting terrorism will continue to serve as PR smokescreens for a government terrorizing and inflicting mass carnage on Palestinians. Deserving only unequivocal condemnation, Hamas's killing and abduction of civilians set the stage for Israel's slaughter of civilians now underway in Gaza. It is a slaughter. That is sadly the only way that I think you can describe it, other than a genocide and an ethnic cleansing. Because I saw a tweet today, a picture, I don't know how real it is, if it was AI, but it was a bulldozer that was literally pushing homes and rubble into the water,
into the sea,
and clearing the land. Absent from the New York, absent from the New York Times homepage Monday night, and relegated to page 9 of the newspaper's print edition on Tuesday, a grisly news story began this way. Quote, Israeli airstrikes pounded Gaza on Monday, flattening mosques over the heads of worshippers, wiping away a busy marketplace full of shoppers, and killing entire families, witnesses and authorities in Gaza said. Witnesses and authorities in Gaza said. So basically, they're not taking their word for it. They're citing sources. 5 Israeli airstrikes ripped through the marketplace in the Jabalia refugee camp, reducing it to rubble and killing dozens, the authorities said. Other strikes hit 4 mosques in the Shati refugee camp and killed people worshiping inside, they said. Witnesses said boys had been playing soccer outside one of the mosques when it was struck. And I saw actually an interview with one of those boys. Yeah. Along with releasing a statement about the latest tragic turn of events, the rootsactionorg.org, they've offered supporters just a piece, a quick way to email their members of Congress and President Biden, which is accomplishing like throwing a pebble into the ocean. The message is that the horrific cycle of violence in the Middle East will not end until the Israeli occupation ends. And a huge obstacle to ending the occupation has been the U.S. government. No, that is the largest obstacle. It's not even huge. It's the largest. It's not even close. So this was in Counterpunch, which is a good independent outlet. Norman Solomon, I agree with on some stuff, and on others I don't, but I totally agree with him here. There's also this incredible article out of Mondoweiss about the disinformation campaign that's happening, right? And we talked about that from Alan, right? This is also, but then we're going to get to the hospital. Yeah, the claims of beheaded babies.
We talked about on INN News, which we put up on Substack, right?
Yep.
Sure.
Coming to a Substack newsletter near you.
They're doing a war on terror memorial. They got Baby Bush planning a war on terror memorial.
What?
It's going to be like near the Lincoln Memorial.
He's in charge of it?
And the Vietnam War Memorial. Yeah.
Oh, get out.
Trump ceded money to it. I wish I was.
Oh my God.
There's a thing on the website of like, help us design it. Right?
Oh,
and
come
it lists
on.
you like, what would you like when you are in front of the global war on terror memorial? What would you like to feel? And like options were like unity, patriotism, like peace, nothing like remorse, regret, shame, none of those. Like,
yeah, terrible.
Repentance.
No,
none of those things.
It doesn't seem like it.
So,
okay. The Israeli disinformation campaign, they're talking about which one? This is about the beheaded infants, right? That had multiple objectives, the gravest being the provision of political leverage for Israel to execute airstrikes, any possible ground invasion, without facing repercussions. Again, that's what Norman Solomon was saying. They were going to use that as an excuse to do anything that they thought, look, hey, you started this, now we're just going to finish it. Right? It's crucial to understand that the core of Israel's distress stems from two pivotal setbacks experienced on Saturday. First, there was a comprehensive failure in its surveillance, detection, and defensive mechanisms. This oversight was intensified by the ineptitude of its intelligence service to anticipate and thwart the offensive initiated by Palestinian fighters in Gaza. Such a shortcoming not only tarnishes its global intelligence reputation, but also strains its societal ties. Second blow was the unforeseen dissolution and downfall of its southern division, which is a development that caught even the Palestinian groups in Gaza off guard. Members of Israel's southern division were either captured, perished, or opted for retreat. Nobody talks about that. Only a few fought, and it took Israel more than 4 days to regain control of the Gaza envelope, a wide area surrounding Gaza that was infiltrated by a meager force of 1,200 fighters. You're not getting this from anywhere else but Mondoweiss, which, by the way, is another Indie Media Award honoree. This holds monumental significance. As a state rooted in colonialism, Israel's prestige and survival hinges on the prowess and integrity of its defense systems and armed forces, but the swift collapses of its military divisions, coupled with rapid fragmentation of its southern command, represents a profound psychological blow. This crisis has driven its right-wing administration to solicit international military backing, and you've seen that with aircraft carriers coming into the Gulf, moving into the Mediterranean, which is a move that will inevitably reshape its political landscape and influence the future trajectories of several of its leaders once the conflict ceases. And I totally agree with that. It makes a big statement to every other country in the region that the U.S. is sending an aircraft carrier or a carrier group, right? Yet at the heart of these unfolding events lies a disconcerting decline in Israel's strategic foresight. Right? Its frenzied reactions not only underscore the psychological trauma experienced on Saturday, but also project a macabre display of capabilities, intending to depict the Israeli military as a streamlined apparatus for killing and destruction. However, the current narratives lack a clear strategic vision, making its vow to annihilate Hamas a contentious stance that poses intricate ramifications for the broader regional dynamics. On top of the fact that now you've got protests happening worldwide in cities, like big protests. Thousands of people are now showing up around the country every day, not just here, but in Germany. And they were arresting people. They were arresting people in France.
And not AI ones.
No, those are real ones.
Real people.
Right. Another component is vital for its disinformation campaign, aiming to rekindle unity and determination within its society during times when such sentiments are waning. Currently, Israeli society is plagued by internal political discord, marked by profound mistrust dividing various ethnic and political factions. Yeah, you've got, first of all, Netanyahu. Thank you, Richie. Oh, shout out to Richie. Go follow Richie Medhurst. I know just about everybody here already does, but if you don't already, Richard Medhurst on Rumble. Richard Medhurst. He got demonetized off of YouTube too. Solidarity with our brother Richard. He's been going real hard, way harder than anybody in INN, and I understand why.
Wake up, asshole.
Yeah, thank you. That's literally that is the phrase that woke me up 3 years ago. But what's happening is that Israeli society is plagued by internal political discord, right? So you've got Bibi with corruption charges. Then you had the other prime minister came in and they got him out, and Netanyahu somehow ends up back in power, and he puts this Ben-Gvir as his, I believe, defense minister, and that guy decides, he said he's ramping up and he's been taking a hardline stance against Palestinians, and we've been seeing this. There has been an average of a killing a day. No, not a hard line stance, a hard line stance, a hard line in the sand. Yes, but there has been a murder a day of a citizen, of an innocent citizen in Palestine every day this year. Over 270 of them, from what I said. And that was before all this started. I mean, now it's in the thousands, unfortunately. Again, thousands of children. So here's what's happening and here's the other thing. Another component, like I said, is even more crucially, this unfolds as a backdrop where Israel, devoid of any tangible political solution to a prolonged conflict and while besieging Gaza, presumed it could operate without facing repercussions. The rift between its populace and military and political elite demands the crafting of a narrative resonant with both Jewish and Israeli sensitivities. You've had Israelis in the streets protesting against what they've been doing to the Palestinian people. And they've been demolishing homes, kicking Palestinians out of their houses, and leaving them with nothing. Now, a ground maneuver in the Gaza Strip would necessitate significant sacrifice on the part of Israel's military, and its wager that a ground offensive would end Palestinian resistance could also backfire and lead to an even worse political and strategic condition, which is why they decided to bomb the shit out of it. Moreover, the unwavering support from the U.S. and its attempts at deterrence may prove futile in dissuading other factions from joining the conflict. Entities like Hezbollah have predicated their existence on championing the Palestinian cause. Their silence or inaction.
Hezbollah.
Correct. Hezbollah. Shout out to the Dagestanis. Their silence or inaction now would undermine their core principles, and they haven't been silent. Strategically, neither Hezbollah nor Iran can afford to watch one of its paramount bastions in Gaza crumble without intervening. Word is that they were all behind.
Or the Dagestanis.
Word is that they all collectively were behind and supporting what happened with Hamas and how they broke through the walls.
See, I know it's weird, fight nerdy shit to pay attention to the Dagestanis, but Khamzat is friends with Chechnya leader, like directly. Like this dude shows up and shoots AKs at this guy's house.
Kadyrov.
Right?
Ramzan Kadyrov.
You got him. Right. Kadyrov. You got Khamzat Chimaev, who just won the UFC championship.
Last night? I thought he was the champion
last
already.
Night.
I thought he already was the champ.
Well, I mean, and still.
Yes, he defended it. So,
but like you have him openly supporting Palestinians to the point where he said on air that like, I am not built like other people. Give me rifle. I will go to die for Allah. Like, it was serious shit. Like, I see children. How could you not see children? It was crazy. And they were smart, and they said a lot of it in Arabic, then got translated. You know? So, you know, they must have not had their Arabic translator that day.
I also want to make an appeal and show you guys what
Dagestani's both Russian and so
what Mondo Weiss, oh goodness, has been doing.
You know,
another day reporting from the war, but they have been doing daily coverage, an update of. Wow, what happened? Oh, he lost his mic, his battery. Something happened.
But, no, I didn't.
Oh, you were.
No, I was trying to remind myself that. You know, INN has a person in Russia that is only, I don't know, 3-4 hours away from Dagestan. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure when they come back, someone could interview them. Be very smart. You know?
So this is what I want to shout out. Mondo Weiss has been covering a whole section on Operation Al-Aqsa flood. And they've been giving daily updates about what's happening inside the walls. And they're incredible, and we need to support them because there aren't enough of them. And here's another article. Now, this one is tepid. This comes from Common Dreams. But this one I thought was also important because follow the money. What's also part of it okay, is that war profiteer stocks are soaring as Israel bombs Gaza. And again, this was from October 9th. I planned to do this story last week. So I'm sure they're soaring even higher. War is good for business. That's what one stock defense executive said at London Arms Conference last month. And what the stock market reflected on Monday.
Yeah.
Right. So
Julie Love in the chat. Did I read Israel bombed 4 countries today, including Egypt?
Allegedly. Yes, they did.
Those are possible. Allegedly. It's safe and effective. Don't worry about it.
Yes, Axel the Dissident over
allegedly.
Axel the Dissident over on Rumble. Thank you so much for your support. Y'all follow Unusual Whales. I do on Instagram. Yes, we do. And we follow them also on Twitter, of course. And I know that Kit from Hardlands shares them quite a bit. I think he turned us on to that. And we got Dave Burt over on the Rockfin.
Cheers and salutations. Smoke if you got them.
So rockfin.com/
You're welcome.
IND Left
what
News.
Can I say?
Except you're welcome. Rockfin.com/ IND Left News and rumble.com/C/independent left news, all one word, and I'll drop that in the chat for anyone that wants to go to alternate platforms. Here's Rumble. Bam. And here's Rockfin. Blam. All right. So, because look, we need these alternate platforms. All right. Because look at what happened to INN this week. Greg published, and it could have been any one of us, but Greg published a video that had a title that they did not like, that they gave a strike to, and now we can't upload for a week. We can't stream there for a week. But here we go. Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, RTX, previously known as Raytheon, were all affected. Yeah, they were all up. Okay. General Dynamics rose the most since March 2020, gained over 9%. And you had the tweet from Jeff Stein at the Washington Post. Even the WAPO noticed, but I think they're celebrating all this. Barron's pointed out that separately, Lockheed's board on Friday approved the expansion of their stock repurchase program by $6 billion. And they raised its quarterly dividend to $3.15 a share from $3. So they're paying out more to their shareholders. They're buying more of their stock back to artificially inflate the price of that stock. All right. And yeah, clearly it's a huge human tragedy that we can't wait to sell more weaponry to and support. So as countries need to replenish their weapons, we do think defense companies will do very well. Right. Less than 2 months after Russia's invasion, William Hartung, who's a senior research fellow at the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft, highlighted how such conflicts benefit the arms industry, writing for Tom Dispatch that the war in Ukraine will indeed be a bonanza for the likes of Raytheon and Lockheed Martin, which it has been. You know, you've got Raytheon Stinger and anti-aircraft missiles, and Raytheon and Lockheed Martin produce Javelin anti-tank missiles that Washington already provided Ukraine by the thousands. Terrible. So oil prices also climbed Monday in response to the violence. So we're all paying more because of this, not just in taxes. And of course, taxes don't fund spending, but we are all paying in capital for these wars. We're paying for the weaponry. We're paying in increased prices. We're also paying an opportunity cost for the things that we're not choosing to focus and spend our money and time on. So I did want to talk a little bit about the profit motive. Now this is from SheerPost. Yet another, by the way, Common Dreams. And Jessica's not, but Common Dreams is an Indie Media Award honoree, as is SheerPost. And man, Mr. Fish knocks another one out. Mr. Fish knocked one out. Mr. Fish is like, he draws like Family Circus style cartoons in this case. And this is a parent talking to their child. All right, so here's what's going on. In a land far, far away, there's a giant prison that's full of people who shouldn't be in there at all. And the prison was built by a bunch of other people who have a history of being hated for no reason at all. And the reason they built the prison was because they thought it would keep them safe if they locked up the locals who they thought might be part of the group that hated them for no reason at all. So anyway, the leaders of the people who have a history of being hated for no reason at all have lost their minds from the terrible stress of being prison guards for so long and have gotten into the unfortunate habit of doing hateful things and being horribly cruel to their prisoners who are in prison for no reason at all. And over time, this has made some of the prisoners themselves lose their minds with their own hatred and want to be horribly cruel to the people who have a history of being hated for no reason at all. So one day, the prisoners who lost their minds left the prison and murdered a bunch of non-prisoners who shouldn't have been murdered at all, and now the people who run the prison are planning to increase their horrible cruelty towards the prisoners who shouldn't be in prison at all, and nobody outside the land that's far, far away will know what to say, because nobody wants to be accused of being hateful towards the people who have a history of being hated for no reason at all, or being indifferent to the agony of the people who are being treated so cruelly in the giant prison that should never have been built in the first place. I hope that clears everything up, Dove. Did it clear that up for you?
Fatality.
I think.
Everybody got that? Sheer post, Mr. Fish. Amazing. And of course, it wouldn't be complete. Now we're getting into the narrative management and propaganda around the hospital bombing. And it's bad. We still, honestly, both sides are claiming that the other side did it to this minute. And it is a classic study in propaganda. So I'm going to hedge for YouTube purposes and say, we don't know who did it. Although all evidence and Al Jazeera and everything proves to a certain narrative that seems to
just like we don't know who blew up the Nord Stream.
That's
pipeline,
correct.
One of the biggest one of the biggest acts of ecological terror that has ever happened. But whatever.
Yeah. So, Caitlin, mass media reporters aren't buying.
What's wrong with that?
Mass media reporters aren't buying Israel's hospital bombing story. Go figure. Now, Tim is incredible.
Why.
Tim is incredible. I never played Tim, and I think I'd like to, because people play all kinds of video clips and all kinds of stuff, and I'm sure Caitlin would be cool with that. And I can pause it when we want to comment, but I think he says it better than us, so I'm going to let him do it.
Mass media reporters aren't buying Israel's hospital bombing story. A huge blast in Gaza has destroyed the Al-Ahli Arab hospital, killing hundreds of people. The exact death toll is still unknown. Details of who is responsible for the explosion are being hotly debated by all parties, and this is still a developing story with a lot of details yet to be revealed. But what I'd like to quickly document as things unfold is the highly unusual number of mass media reporters I've been seeing who haven't hesitated to point to Israel as the probable culprit. After noting that Israel is blaming the blast on a failed rocket launch by Palestinian Islamic Jihad, MSNBC foreign correspondent Raf Sanchez quickly pointed out that PIJ rockets don't tend to do that kind of damage, but Israeli missiles do. He also noted that Israel has an extensive history of lying about this sort of thing. The Israeli military at this point is not providing any evidence to back up its claims that this was a Palestinian Islamic Jihad rocket. They are citing intelligence that they have not yet made public, Sanchez said. We should also say that this kind of death toll is not what you normally associate with Palestinian rockets. These rockets are dangerous, they are deadly, they do not tend to kill hundreds of people in a single strike in the way that Israeli high explosives, especially these bunker buster bombs that are used to target these Hamas tunnels under Gaza City, do have the ability to kill hundreds of people. And we should say finally that there are instances in the past where the Israeli military has said things in the immediate aftermath of an incident that have turned out not to be true in the long run, Sanchez added. And the one example I'll give you is that when the Al Jazeera journalist Shireen Abu Akleh was killed in the occupied West Bank, the Israeli military initially said she was killed by Palestinian gunmen, And it was only months and months later that they admitted that it was likely an Israeli soldier who fired the fatal shot. CNN's Clarissa Ward said essentially the same thing. I will say, just based on seeing these rocket attacks many times over the years, that they don't usually have an impact like that in terms of the size of the blast, in terms of the scale of the death toll and the scale of the damage, Ward said. It's also not the first time, it's important to add, that we have seen the IDF categorically deny something before being forced to kind of do an about-face after an extensive investigation.
Mm-hmm.
BBC foreign correspondent John Donison gave basically the same opinion. It's hard to see what else this could be, really, given the size of the explosion, other than an Israeli airstrike, or several airstrikes, Donison said from Jerusalem. Because,
allegedly,
when we've seen rockets being fired out of Gaza, we never see explosions of that scale. We might see half a dozen, maybe a few more people being killed in such rocket attacks, but we've never seen anything on the scale of the sort of explosion on the video I watched earlier. That's 3 mass media reporters that I've just seen in my random information-gathering meanderings, not on their personal social media accounts, but live on air. It's highly unusual to see this degree of skepticism in the Western press right off the bat when it goes against the information interests of Israel specifically or the U.S. power alliance more generally. Typically, we've been seeing the media uncritically report unverified claims about Palestinian militants while expressing rigorous skepticism solely toward any information which might benefit the Palestinian resistance. So there's clearly something about this particular story which makes mass media reporters remarkably reluctant to push the Israeli narrative. Maybe they're getting information in their group chats, which has caused them to keep Israel's claims about the hospital bombing at arm's length. Or maybe they're just looking at the facts and deciding this narrative is too flimsy to get behind. If it looks like Israel's version of events will fall apart after investigation, they're not going to want to stake their reputation and their pride on pushing it with their usual gusto during an Israeli military operation that is facing unusually intense scrutiny from the entire world. Israel does, after all, have an extensive history of attacking hospitals and healthcare facilities, including in this current operation in Gaza, including apparently bombing this exact same hospital just a few days ago. Relief Web, which is run by the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, recently published a report on the numerous Israeli strikes that have hit hospitals, ambulances, and healthcare workers between October 12th and October 15th, and listed among the hospitals hit the Al-Ahli Arab Hospital in Gaza City, the same hospital that was just destroyed a few days later. Citing Al Jazeera V and Personal Communication, Relief Web reports the following, quote, 14 October 2023. In Gaza City and Governorate, Al-Ahli Arab Hospital was hit by Israeli airstrikes, partially damaging 2 floors and damaging the ultrasound and mammography room. 4 people were injured. End quote. It's also probably worth noting that according to the World Health Organization, this hospital was one of the 20 hospitals which the IDF had ordered to evacuate because of the aggressions it was planning to inflict on that part of Gaza. Again, information is still coming in, and this developing story could possibly wind up looking very different from what it looks like right now. But if I was an Israel apologist, I don't think I'd find the current winds in the mass media very encouraging.
Right. Apparently, the hospital is still standing, with some analysis suggesting that this probably rules out a ground-burst Israeli airstrike, but not a strike by drone or other airburst munitions used by Israel. I also want to go ahead.
Axel the Dissident. You are right. I said Kamzat. Who I meant was Islam. Won his champion.
Anyway, this one. You guys need to evacuate.
Mixed up. It's very difficult.
Well, hey, I say they all look alike with the chin straps. So,
yeah. Chin strap, cauliflower ear is kind of the look.
Right. You guys need to evaluate that. To evacuate that hospital, you'll get killed. We can't evacuate the hospital. It's a hospital. Powerful missile hits the hospital. It was the Palestinians. Sure.
Also, scroll up a little bit.
Yeah.
You keep scrolling. I'll tell you when. Pause. Go back down. Yes, I just wanted to point out Caitlin's little bar here. Just in my random information gathering meanderings. That little bit of that.
Yep.
That one.
So Caitlin,
very
of course,
well done.
is one of the
double right there. You put in the books.
One of Indy's favorite Indie Media Award honorees, and we're gonna have a new set of awards coming out soon. I think this guy may be in line for one. That's Dan Cohen. Dan has been a fucking beast this week. I mean, just amazing.
Dan's the man.
Well, the last 2 weeks since the 7th.
My man.
But even before that, Twitter demotes Substack links, which means that his expose on Israel's massive role in Colombian genocide is being suppressed, of course. So you can follow him over at uncaptured.substack.com. Go give him some support. He
Also,
actually just go ahead.
Keep your eye on Brazil too. Like they still have a little right-wing fascist neo-lib group that's influencing Lula and whatever to like support Israel on top of that, which makes it hard for this whole BRICS thing if they're gonna, do that. Someone might have to come over and tell them. At least some of the, like Bolsonaro support.
Yep. So again, this is, when he was being interviewed for Telesur with the Empire Files. But Dan has been doing yeoman's work. I mean, just wow. He made it a documentary that he's looking to fund and get support for with Max Blumenthal called Killing Gaza. I don't want to run this trailer here. What I do want is to share. He was there. Selfie with the greatest threat to Israel. I just hope, and I imagine what horrors these kids have experienced in the nearly 9 years since he took this photo. I hope they're still alive. We all do. They bombed the headquarters of Gaza's heroic civil defense, so they can't dig survivors and dead bodies from the rubbles. I mean, it's just
not necessarily.
Want to show all this, but what I wanted to show was this, which was Al Jazeera. Okay, investigations revealed discrepancies in the hospital attack claims, and they actually had footage of the incident, right? That in recent days to piece together what happened, and while Al Jazeera continues to gather information, here's what you need to know, and they actually show that
on the 17th of October 23, hundreds of Palestinians were killed when the Al-Ahli Arab hospital in Gaza was bombed. Blame the blast on an Israeli airstrike. The Israeli army denies responsibility and claims the attack was due to a failed rocket launch by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. They say they used Al Jazeera footage to allegedly confirm these claims.
But you're asking me for proof? You don't need to get proof from me. All you need to do is switch over to Al Jazeera, who broadcasted it live, and you can actually see. I got a screen caption just for you to see. This is Al Jazeera from last night.
Our digital investigations team, Sanad, decided to investigate these claims and conducted an in-depth analysis of this Al Jazeera video, along with several other videos from multiple sources, and established a detailed second-by-second timeline of the events. By analysing Al Jazeera's live stream starting at 1845, the team was able to identify 4 Israeli airstrikes on Gaza, targeting the area near the hospital, starting at 1854-28, then 1855-03, then 1857-42, and then 1858-04. That's military time for just before 7 p.m. local. The team cross-referenced this video with another, captured by a camera situated south of Tel Aviv, showing a wide view of the Gaza Strip. That video shows a series of rocket launches from Gaza. That video clearly shows how the Iron Dome intercepted these rockets. Going back to the Al Jazeera live feed at 18:59:35, we can see a single rocket launched from Gaza. This is the rocket in question. This rocket can also be seen on the Israeli video. 15 seconds later, Al Jazeera's live feed shows that the same rocket was intercepted at exactly 18:59:50. This interception has the same afterglow seen in previous interceptions. A closer look at the video captured by the Al Jazeera live feed shows the rocket being completely destroyed and broken apart in the sky. According to all feeds and videos analyzed, this rocket was intercepted and was the last one launched from Gaza before the bombing of the hospital.
So how
5
could it
seconds
possibly
after
have...
that interception, an explosion in Gaza can be seen, followed 2 seconds later by a much larger explosion.
We'll see if the train left
This
at
is
like
the
strike
9 o'clock.
that hit Al-Ahli Arab Hospital.
It was traveling.
As a result, Al
60 miles
Jazeera
an hour.
Digital Investigations team found no grounds to the Israeli army claim that the strike on the Al-Ahli Arab Hospital in Gaza was caused by a failed rocket launch.
Stop the killing. Stop.
No.
Right. So we watched the video. You can see the use of a different type of artillery can't be ruled out. Oh,
Yeah,
look
just
at this.
a woman
Bellingcat.
crying over her dead children.
Yep. Bellingcat identified what appeared to be the impact earlier after analyzing footage and images of the aftermath.
Of course it's there.
Of course it's Bellingcat. That's already being done with at the behest of the State Department and the intel community. They are literally funded by and in bed with the intel community, even though they deny that they are. They're liars because they're professional spies. All right. Again, there's a lot more here in the Al Jazeera article. I'll put this in the... All right, this was the whole thing about the Hanya Naftali, who's Netanyahu's assistant. Okay, he tweeted out that they had celebrated that they had destroyed the hospital right afterwards, and then he deleted that tweet, which was suspect at best. And then, of course, we've got Reef. Let me get this straight.
Yeah.
First, it was we warned them that we would bomb the hospital. Then it was actually, no, it was Hamas. Then it was, well, we bombed the courtyard and never leveled the hospital. Right. Okay. So...
You crazy Dutch bastard.
The only other postscript I want to point out to right now on the propaganda side of this is that they're now blocking, in response to the fact that Al Jazeera has completely debunked what happened there. They're now kicking Al Jazeera the fuck out of there.
Huh?
No better way to prove that they were right than to kick them out. All right? According to Israeli media.
And the best part of this plan is no one can stop me.
Well, that seems to be what's going on here. Trying to see if we can get reader mode, but no, we can't. Okay. Israel set to ban Al Jazeera. This is Middle East Eye. Also follow MiddleEastEye.net. Jonathan Cook publishes there very regularly, or they pick up his stuff and republish it. He's an Indie Media Award honoree. These are good people. According to Israeli media, Attorney General Gali Baharav Miara and Communications Minister Shlomo Kahari reached an agreement on Tuesday on the wording of emergency regulations to stop. Yep, not that one, but to stop the Qatari outlet from operating. The Israeli government has repeatedly criticized Al Jazeera's coverage of the ongoing war in the Gaza Strip. Al Jazeera is one of the few global media channels that has a physical presence in Gaza and Israel. Israel's barred anyone from leaving or entering Gaza, of course, which is put under complete siege, cutting off water, electricity, and food. International coverage of the Israeli bombardment, therefore, has fallen to media organizations already on the ground, such as Al Jazeera. So the Qatari TV channel, of course, has had a difficult relationship with Israel, to say the least. Most recently over the May 2022 murder of veteran Al Jazeera correspondent Shireen Abu Akleh. Justice for Shireen. Shout out to a Gaijin girl who tried to challenge Rabbi Shmuley and RFK about bringing charges up on. Right. But Crab. She specifically asked the question about, will you recommend that the Israeli soldiers that killed her will be brought on charges and brought here to the United States on extradition? And of course they said no. No comment from Al Jazeera yet, but I'm sure it's going to be a big FU. Of course, Israel repeatedly denied that its soldiers had shot the reporter, with various investigations proving their claims incorrect. We know this for an absolute fact. All right. We did all right. 3 stories, but a lot of articles, a lot of coverage, and there's a lot more out there. Make sure that the sources that you check and that you're listening to are vetted, that you trust them. Verify everything from multiple places before you retweet or post, because you never know what can get you in trouble. This is, war, and both sides are looking to, unfortunately, put out propaganda. I think that there really isn't both sides of a war. Like I said, this is a massacre. This is a ethnic cleansing, and the stories that we're getting out of Gaza are legitimate fact. I mean, you can see the footage. You can see the anguish on the people's faces and in the voices. Like, that's not manufactured. That's real. That's all happening, and it's being done intentionally and to the delight of some, which is beyond disgusting. I don't know where else to go with that. Oh man, I'm your source. Oh boy, I love you, Cookies, and I'm doing all I can to stay up and stay on top of it. Like you said, we're looking at a lot of the award honorees. I don't do the reporting. I just gather the reporting and I aggregate it. But Dan Cohen has been incredible. Yeah.
And in case this video goes down, you can catch us on the Rumble.
Well, Rumble and Rockfin, yep. Max Blumenthal has been doing great coverage, really hitting hard at the Israeli government for what they're doing.
He's another one of these, right?
Yep, Gray Zone sure is an Indie Media Award honoree. And we're going to be having a new next Sunday night. We're going to have a very special time that we're going to be unveiling the 2023 list of the class of 2023 for the Indie Media Awards. So, been working on a bunch of different things. We have a Substack now for the Indie Media Awards, so go check that out. Here's the link. And
coming to a Substack newsletter.
Fuck you, Rachel Maddow. Oh man,
I knew you'd hate that fucking soundbite.
I already hate that. But shout out to Max Blumenthal for getting that soundbite. So,
Rachel, this speech is boring and paranoid.
Oh, that's really funny. Yeah, Indie Media Awards.
Boring
Indie
and
Media
paranoid,
Awards.
Max.
Boring and paranoid.
So every single honoree that from 2022 has their own page with their own links. We have a list for all the top journalists, top outlets, and top live streamers and podcasters. This year, we're going to be adding a new category for top video editors, so I'm excited to release that. And we've got, and again, this is in addition to the 38 that are here now. We're going to have another 30 that we're gonna spotlight on our showcase and talk about next Sunday night. So
good.
Pretty good.
Pretty good.